Today's episode is a little bit different. We're doing something a little bit different, I guess I should say. This our channel is named Chain Breakers, but we have not highlighted yet an actual chain breaker. Like we ourselves are chain breakers, but we haven't highlighted a chain breaker that was influential in the forming of our society. And it doesn't necessarily have to be agriculture related, which I think a lot of our stuff ties back into agriculture because agriculture is wealth. But today we're highlighting one of the baddest people to ever walk the planet, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, right? She is born in 1917, the youngest of 20. One of 20. I'm not sure if she was the youngest. She was born into sharecropping. She spends the majority of her years involved in it, some works and some forms of a plantation, whether when she was a child or when she was married. And her chain really begins to rattle. Of course, when you're looking at that, when you're born on a sharecropping plantation, there is no wealth, right? There is no ability to exceed expectations. You are where you are, and it's very tough to do so. Remains there on the plantation until 1962, right? SNCC comes to town in 1962 and begin to organize to vote, right? And so from that point on, she was the timekeeper, and she was the timekeeper as well at the plantation. The plantation owner, of course, gets wind of that she's been organizing with SNCC, and she's given the boot. She's no longer allowed to work at the plantation, her and her husband. In the process, between 1962, she doesn't get to vote until 1964. In between that time, she's beaten badly. She's left blind in one of her eyes. She paid a dear cost for being so outspoken, but she doesn't get to vote until 1964. Now, she also has, but in Mississippi, I should have prefaced that by saying where she was. She was in Mississippi, and of course, Mississippi was dominated at that time by the Democratic Party, which was majority all white male, right? And so her party that she formed was not given representation at the Democratic convention. This was a hubbub, right? Okay, right. So you can't really truly want change if you're not allowed at the seat at the table, right? So if you're just constantly given the scraps of come from the table, you really can't make no change. So before 1964, she goes before the Democratic convention, the committee for the convention with her party. Let me think. What's the name of it? So, her party's name. I think it's the Mississippi. I should have. Okay, I wrote it down. I got a little cheat note there. It's the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. All right, so her and her party, they go before the table. They go before the committee. She gets to give her speech, right? And this is in 1964. Now, pardon the dog. The committee, of course, her testimony is so powerful because she's going to speak on how she was beaten, bruised, and battered. Not just her, but everyone that's involved with her in the attempt to vote, right? So she's speaking before Congress. It gets televised. Lyndon B. Johnson, the president at the time, probably one of the most reluctant people to ever try to actually spawn change, tries to intervene and tries to give some malarkey of a speech during her televised testimony. It goes away because eventually they broadcast her whole testimony. All right, and that's in 1964. Now, she eventually, with the help of her, Dr. King, SNCC, and a whole bunch of organizations, her party does eventually get 2 at-large seats at the table for the Democratic convention in Mississippi. That's pretty big, but it's not. It is truly a chain-breaking moment, right? That's something where chains have been broken. Eventually, she does a lot of other things in the background, as far as organizing for trying to further advance equality for African Americans, not just African Americans, but in particular in Mississippi, poor people in general. If you're not familiar with the Poor People's Campaign, look it up. So she does a lot of things in the background, runs for that, does a lot of other things. Of course, she's probably one of the most powerful people that when a president intervenes to try to stop you from doing something, that lets you know you're number one on the hit list. And so she, for whatever reason, powers that be, try to keep her spirit and her energy and everything tampered down, but she prevails anyway. Okay, as a tie back to agriculture, not only is she a daughter of a sharecropper, she knows the ins and outs of planning. She knows the ins and outs of the system, which is agriculture, and not having the ability to obtain wealth through it when you are systemically oppressed, right? So she knows that. So in I want to say it's 1969. Yep. Oh, hey, I paid attention to history, but I wrote it down just to be safe. In 1969, she does form her own. She does form her own cooperative, the Freedom Farm Cooperative, and this was an attempt, an ability to advance our society and give a more sustainable, have equal and sustainable access to people that are poor, not just people of color, but people that are poor. I think a lot of times people mistake Fannie Lou Hamer as someone who just fought, and Dr. King as well, for just fighting for change for people of color, but that's not true. They fought for the poor. So, especially in the South here, a lot of sharecroppers were not only black, they were also white. And so she forms a cooperative. I think the cooperative fees is like $1 and some change. Only 30 families in the whole, like 1,500 or so, have the ability to actually pay the monthly fees. They eventually go on to acquire something like 650 or so acres of land, and they also they form a program based around the pig. And of course, pig is power. If you are thinking about agriculture, there's probably chickens 1, pig 2, cows 3, just because the ability for them to pigs don't require as much as a cattle do. All right, pig get a bad rep due to our face, of course, but pigs are probably some of the most intelligent and probably some of the most important species to our mankind as far as science goes. So they get a bad rep, but they're one of the best producing animals as far as agriculture. Now, so it eventually, the attempt in doing that was to show the government, to show people that we are trying to have a sustainable society with equality. We are not just asking you to give us government handouts. We're trying to actually pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We do need help. I know a lot of people say you can always pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I know a lot, not that I know a lot of millionaires, but I know a lot of wealthy people who've actually done that, and they got it out of the mud and did it. But come on, man, it's not as easy as that makes it sound. For every successful Walmart, for every successful, I'll put it in the form of artists, right? As artists, you're a painter, you're a sculptor, you're a dancer, you're a musician. For every Dizzy Gillespie, for every Langston Hughes, for every, my favorite, Gauguin and Basquiat, there's someone just as talented as them, but they just, for whatever reason, that star didn't shine so bright for them. So you can't always pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You need some actual help, and that's what Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was trying to do in the forming of her co-op. If her co-op could have had access to funds like so many other big farms do, right? She would have been able to do that, right? Because no shade, but some of the biggest states in our, and I won't say no shade, some of the biggest corporations, farming-wise, get subsidies, and a lot of those are in states that there ain't no black people in it. There ain't no people of color in it. And if you watch the channel, you know we're very in tuned on that, and we do believe that in order for us to have wealth, we do have to have access to land and farming, because that is wealth. So places like Iowa and Idaho and Wisconsin, no shade, because there was funders from Wisconsin that actually helped Miss Fannie Lou Hamer with, I think, like $10,000 in her initial investment into her corporation. But places like Iowa, Wisconsin, Idaho, South Dakota, North Dakotas, these places where a rule, they take giant subsidies for the big farms, not the small farms, but the big farms. They get gigantic subsidies. And it just so happens ain't no people of color there. There's no black, there's no Latino, there's no indigenous or anything. There's no one of them there, right? So in the places of the South where we were more prevalent and more prominent and had the actual land to do so, not only were we aired out, and not only was that taken away from us but there was no backing from the federal government, such as what Miss Fannie Lou Hamer tried to get. There was no backing for us there, and so we were squeezed out. So black people in the South, in farming, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Florida, we were all squeezed out of that. So Latinos, we were squeezed out. Native and indigenous people, I don't like saying native, but indigenous people, not only they weren't squeezed out, they were marched out. They marched them out. So this is so important. That's why she's such a chain breaker, because she highlighted where we want to do it. We just don't have the access to do it because we have been systemically stopped. And so Miss Fannie Lou Hamer is one of the baddest people to ever walk the planet. And I pray that you guys will just do some research and just look her up. She's in my top 5, my Mount Rushmore of activists. And it ties back into agriculture. She broke chains. And I just love it. Like I said, I think she's one of the baddest women in the planet, man. Take some time out. We're going to give recognition where recognition is due on this channel to people who actually broke chains. And that is no other than Miss Fannie Lou Hamer. If she ain't your cup of tea, then you ain't no chain breaker. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry to tell you that. You on the wrong channel, cuz. So we're going to shout out to her today on this platform. We'll try to do this as often as we can. Shout out chain breakers that made a difference. So Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, we are forever in your debt. You are a chain breaker. If you ain't about it, get off of here. All right. Next episode, we're gonna be talking about germination. I know that's hard. Like, that's a terrible transition because it's not gonna go hard. I know we went a little harder than we normally do on this channel, but you can't be no chain breaker and not make no noise. Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was a lion, and she roared and she made noise, and that's what it's about, man. So I thank you all for watching. Next episode, we're not going to talk about germination because we're not going to talk about that anymore. But I pray you, I hope you like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And we'll get it again some other time, guys. Stay blessed.